Our first guest speaker is an expert in simplicity. She literally wrote the book on it, and the book is called Why Simple Wins. She's the founder and CEO of FutureThink, a company that focuses solely on helping organizations eliminate complexity so they can unleash innovation. For years, she's helped companies like Google, Accenture, and Novartis do just that. And today, she's here to show us how we can kill complexity and focus on the work that truly matters. Please join me in a warm welcome for Lisa Bodell.
Carl, thanks. You can introduce me anytime, by the way. That was fantastic.
Don't you miss the applauses and the crowd noise,
yes.
The walk-up music, and yeah.
You know, if they were unmuted, I can feel the vibe right now. Hi, everybody. Hey, I know we've got this small group of, what do we got? About just shy of 400 people here, Carl. So this is fantastic. And I was on a little bit earlier, just hearing the vibe and hearing the presentation. And it was really cool just to see everyone's, getting involved in things and the types of things that you speak about. And I'm honored to be here to talk to you about this topic too. So let me do something really quickly. I'm going to pull up my presentation and share my screen with everybody so we can dive in and get started. Do me a favor for everybody here. I'm sure you've been doing this already, but I want you to get ready and have your chat up, as well as your ability to raise your hand in the participant window. So take a second to do that right now if you don't already have that up. And I am going to bring up my presentation here, Carl, to share with everybody. So here we go. Great. We've got some hands raised already. Fantastic. Okay, so everyone here, do me a favor. How many people just in the chat right now would love it if we could have some more simplicity at work or in your life? Just type that into the chat right now for me, if you could. Yeah.
Fairly unanimous.
Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of a layup, as we call it, Carl.
Yeah.
We seem to be getting a yep, yeah, and lots of exclamation points. I'm sure that's not surprising to you, is it?
Not at all.
Not at all. Well, I'll tell everybody here, I had some great conversations with Carl before this, talking about, how can we really get to the work that matters? So today, I'm going to talk to you about this topic of simplicity, or even more so, its evil twin, complexity. And my goal is to share some stories and examples for how you can make simplicity a habit in the way that you work. So to do that, we've got to do two things. First is get you in the mindset for it. And the second is to give you the toolkit to get it done. Now, let's start with the mindset, because that's the most important piece, in my opinion. Why do we have complexity? What creates it? Why is mindset something that will make it a reality? So I want to give everybody here a parable to think about. I want you to imagine that there are 3 frogs sitting on a log in the middle of a lake. Now, one of these frogs decides to jump into the water. How many frogs are left on the log? Just type that into the chat. 3 frogs on the log. One decides to jump in. How many are left on the log? A wide range of answers. The answer is all 3 are still on the log, because deciding to jump in and actually doing it are 2 very different things. All of you here today answered, yes, I want more simplicity. So you've decided to do it, but how can we help you jump in? What's holding you back? And how can we help you move forward? I want to do something really quick to get the vibe of this group in terms of their feeling on complexity. So it's poll time. I'm going to ask you 2 polls. And here's how it's going to work. We're going to answer the first one, then we're going to answer the second one, and then I'm going to tell you what I think. So let me launch this first poll here. I'd like to get a vibe of what's happening. The first poll is this. We can have this launched. How often do you experience complexity at work? Constantly, frequently, sometimes or rarely? Constantly, you're drowning in it. Frequently, sometimes, or rarely. It's not a thing for you. You have no idea why I'm asked to be here today. It's just not a thing. Okay, I'm just going to give it a couple more seconds, and there we go. Let's share the results. The answer is frequently to constantly. So if I have to add those up, everyone, I'm sure you can do the math. Over 80% of you said it's constantly or frequently. Kudos to the two people that don't see it and those that said sometimes. Okay, let's go to the next poll. So this is, you're experiencing a lot. Now the next question. Let's go to question number 2, if we can launch that one here. Question number 2. Now, of the complexity you do experience when you do, how complex is it? Right? What type of complexity? Very complex? Complex? Somewhat complex. Or it's easy. Really, it's easy peasy lemon squeezy. The work, if I do have a complexity, it's just more of an annoyance. Wow, my gosh. Carl told me beforehand you guys would be active participants. You're coming in hot. Within 10 seconds, we've got 300 people answering this thing. All right, a couple more seconds and we're going to, what's that, Carl?
Experience them live.
Yeah, I'm telling you. They are an active group. Let's show the results here because I think I'm getting the vibe. No surprise. Complex, well, I guess the second runner-up actually is somewhat complex. So you've got complex at almost 50%. Very complex puts you actually over 70%. Why does this matter? So most of you are experiencing complexity, and when you do, it's complex or even very complex. So what do we need to do about that? And just so you get some level of comfort and we can stop sharing the results now, I want to tell you why you're not alone. This is one of those congratulations, you're like everybody else, so that'll make you feel better. So what I want to do now is I want to talk to you a little bit about where some of this is coming from. So if you said that your work is complex or very complex, even somewhat complex, you see some similarities to your results, you're not alone. This was a survey that was done with DuPont not long ago. And they asked people up to senior management level, just below SVP, how would you describe your work every day, the complexity? And they had about 75% say complex or very complex. Now, that's your individual feeling about it. What about where that's coming from within the organization? Complexity is really in our operating system. It's part of the OS. So just to give you a basic comparison, we measure 6 times the amount of metrics we did versus the 1950s now. And that's not surprising, right? Because we have more data and we have more technology. Of course, we're going to measure more. My question is, how much is enough? Because if you used to measure 10 and now you measure 60, are all 60 of those things really relevant? And do you have the time to actually absorb those metrics? The other thing that's happening is the very things that we're putting in place to help us be more organized, simplified, productive are the things that are holding us back from it. Anybody here feel that way? Feel free to type in the chat if you do. I want to get the conversation going. We have increased our governance structures, policies, procedures, committees by anywhere between 50 and 350%. The more regulated you are, the higher up on the scale you are. So what does that mean for us? It means this. I think the complexity is destroying our companies. And I make that very bold statement right up front because I think we're not alone in our feeling that this is dragging us down. SAP actually did another survey not long ago on the future of work, and they interviewed over 3,000 CEOs around the world. And they said, what's your number one strategic concern? For the first time ever, 70% said their number one strategic concern was complexity, right? Not competitiveness, not pricing, not global issues. It was complexity, and they felt it was only getting worse. Now, when you dig deeper, why is that a problem? It's not the complexity just drags down profits. The key takeaway you're going to get from this is not just a financial conversation. The problem with complexity is that complexity is the enemy of meaningful work. It holds you back from doing what you were hired to do in the first place. And I'm going to get into more of that here in a second. So the big thing for you is if it's holding you back, it's slowing you down. And for a company, especially like yours in a tech industry, speed is more important than size. Take a look at this chart right here. This is fascinating. If you look at the top of this chart, 2001, what were the top 5 companies in the world? 2001, it was GE all the way down to Walmart, little Walmart. Go up to 2016, just 15 years later, look at how that's changed. We went from multinational manufacturing companies, gas, finance, large retail, to all tech companies. That is how much speed has affected how we compete. Why did those companies get to move faster than the others? It's because they were focused and they operated with simplicity to take and disrupt their industries. So how do we know that? Take a look at this. I know you know about Exxon and Apple and Facebook, and frankly, I don't want to talk about that. What I want to talk about are the companies that we don't expect. These are billion-dollar businesses, most, not all, less than 15 years old. Netflix is older than 15 years old. But these are companies that operated with simplicity and focus to move faster and disrupt entire industries. So think about this. Uber makes it simple to get a car. Airbnb makes it simple to get a room when we used to travel. Netflix makes it easy for you to binge watch lots of movies and waste your time. Dropbox makes it easy for you to get files. Kickstarter makes it simple for small guys to get big funding. When you operate with simplicity, you can disrupt faster. So here's the question for all of you here. Are you ready? Why do you choose complexity every day? Why do you actively choose it? Here's what I want to do to get us warmed up. I'd like everybody here, and I can't see you, I wish I could. I would like everybody here to do me a favor. I would like you to do this. I'm gonna see if I can turn my screen on here so you guys can see me. I would like you to pat your head, to rub your stomach, and to click your heels. So if you're sitting at your desk, just put down whatever's in your hand, do this with me, pat your head, rub your stomach, and click your heels. Can you do that now? Okay, everybody stop. I'm assuming you gave it a shot. Now type in the chat for me, how many of you were able to do all three things at once? How many of you did all three things at once? Nailed it, got it, first try. It's a confident group, Carl, I like this, very confident. Hands are raised too, fantastic. My wife did, it's a group participation, I like this. First try, one person just answered how I wanted them to. Here's the reality for everybody typing in. I'm glad you're proud if you were able to do all three things at once, but that's not what I asked you to do. All I asked you to do was to pat your head, to rub your stomach, and to click your heels. Why did you do all three? The problem with this is, here's the bad news. Most of complexity is self-imposed and unnecessary. We create the beast that we become a slave to. The good news is, most of it is within our sphere of control. So here's what happened if you just did all three things at once. First, and this is the corollary to business, we like to multitask. But the science has shown us that doing each piece individually gets us better results and actually can be faster over time. The second thing that we did, the second thing is we elevate everything to the same level of importance. Every email, every meeting, every response, every contract, everything is urgent. Is it? How can we as leaders not do that and actually better focus and operate with simplicity? So here's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about what I call the complexity trap. So for you here listening, I want you to think about which one of these is true within the Equinix culture and with your team that you operate in every day. Okay, three things that create complexity. First of all, it makes us have less focus. Most organizations reward people for doing more, not less. Does that sound familiar? I don't know many people here that are rewarded for managing less people, less money, less products, less geographies. You get the idea. But it's not about more, it's about value. So think about it. At the end of the day, do you feel good because you got more done on the to-do list or the valuable things done on your to-do list? Right? That's a mind shift. The second thing is agility. If you're operating with complexity, you can't be agile. You can't move quickly because most of the things that you're spending your time on, if you look at your to-do list, are internal, not external. And I know I'm talking to a group that should be externally focused. The final thing is the result is less thinking. Right? You're spending more time doing versus thinking. I am a doer and I am pro-doing. But the problem is we sacrifice that ability to think strategically and have time to innovate. In fact, I argue that within a lot of companies, thinking has become a daring act. It's become a daring act. So how do we shift that for people? Well, here's what I want us to do. I would like you now to type into the chat, if we want to have more focus, more agility, and more time to think, right? Spend time on the important stuff. When and where do you do your best thinking? Type that into the chat for me right now. When and where are you doing your best thinking? And see the responses that people give. Shower, after 5, while running, outdoors, driving, sleeping at night. Great, I love these responses. This is what we hear all the time, right? Flying, me too. When I used to fly, I would get amazing thinking time done just looking out the window on an airplane, right? Surfing, God, I love that person. That's fantastic. Taking a shower, listening to music. Okay, this is really great. Now let's reflect for a minute. What do all these responses have in common? What do these responses have in common? When and where you do your best thinking. The first 2 people that typed in really nailed it. The first thing is typically is that we're alone. And the second thing is when you're not at work. So I'd like us to reflect on that for a minute. And I had to really think about this, frankly, as a boss too, which is, well, if all my people are doing their best thinking not at work, what are we doing at work? So here's the thing. One of the things that happens, and we forget about this, is we come up often with our best ideas when we're alone, and we build our best ideas when we're together. So a lot of the time, we do our best thinking when it's quiet, when we're not stressed, when we're alone, when we're doing something that we don't have to think about, like driving or cooking or whatever. So I'd like you to think about where and when you do your best thinking, and how could you bring the elements of that to work? So for some people, if it's listening to music, how can you bring some of that into work? If it's walking, how can you take a walking meeting? I take a lot of my phone calls now on walks. How can you bring that to work so then you can actually do more thinking and balance that with the doing? Okay, so that's something for you to think about, and it's a great conversation with your teams. So how are we going to start to get more thinking and simplify how we work so we can spend it on what matters? We need to do internal things, but we need to shift some of that so we can have time and space for the external things and innovative thinking. So I want to share a couple stories, and then I'm going to give you the tips so you can have that toolkit right away when you leave here to simplify. So the first thing I want to share with you is how one organization did this. And I love this story. I just love it. So the setup to this is we've heard a lot of stories right now with COVID of how people have pivoted quickly. Right? I'm sure you've all heard a million stories of how companies have pivoted quickly. The reason they can do that is because they focus on what matters. They operate with simplicity and they can operate with speed. So for example, Dyson actually was able to take his breadth of knowledge in product design and capacity in terms of his production lines and switch to making ventilators, the Covent in the UK, right? Doing good, able to pivot quickly. Then there's people like OpenTable, a restaurant reservation system when no one is going to restaurants. So they took the same technology and said, well, we're not about restaurants, we're about reservations. So how can we open up our system to help people make reservations at grocery stores to shop in a safe environment and help grocery stores better manage their inventory when things are tight? Or I even love this one. Has anyone been bombed yet by their llama, right, in their meetings? I love that a llama farm can think, no one's visiting the llama farm, but for $100 a pop, I'm happy to have our llamas show up in calls, and they've had over 500 requests for meetings and birthday parties. They probably made more in the last couple months than they've made in forever. Pivoting because they were able to think and focus. So there are lots of people that do this, and they make simplicity their competitive advantage. Google has cut the crap committees within different parts of their organization so they can move quickly and get rid of crap. Tesco has people assigned specifically to look at different inventories. So they don't have to have 18 kinds of ketchup on the shelf, they can have 8. You've got GE that constantly looks at contracts. You've got people like Merck and Pfizer all the way up at the other end of the spectrum that have formal simplicity teams, and in some groups, chief simplicity officers that are tasked with getting rid of things that hold them back from innovating faster. How could you do the same thing? There's a group actually at Van City Credit Union in Vancouver that I met at a financial services conference. And what I loved about them was when I first met them, I thought, oh, well, credit union, how fast could they be moving, right? They tend to be the sleepy giants within financial services. They have a lot of money. They're community focused. They don't have clients, they have members. And they're all about customer service. And they were drowning in internal crap, is how they described it. And the person I met at this conference was Jayanne, and she was the Chief Simplicity Officer. And I thought, I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't know that was a thing. And by the way, raise your hands if you would love to have a Chief Simplicity Officer at Equinix. That would be kind of a cool thing, right? A Chief Simplicity Officer. She said, you know, the reason that we have a Chief Simplicity Officer is because of really bad tech implementation that we had. We spent $50 million trying to update our online banking system because we were behind the times. At the end of the year, we were no closer to getting that thing up and running. We were having to fire people. We were way over budget. And our customer service satisfaction was going down, down, down. We didn't know what to do. And a lot of people on the front line looked at us and said, please don't spend that money again yet. Ask us for ideas of how to improve the experience. We are too complex and there's lots of waste we can get rid of internally. So they started a simplicity team that she headed up. They created 5 people that were part-time, that were trained in Agile, and they did 3-day sprints with whatever business unit wanted to go through these simplicity sprints. The sprints had to be focused on policies and procedures that they could get rid of that just were crap in their terms. Unnecessary, were holding them back, weren't transparent, just weren't clear. In 1 year, through these simplicity sprints with a part-time team, they were able to simplify or eliminate over 300 policies or procedures, simplify or eliminate tons of forms. I mean, amazing, right? As well as get rid of steps in a process or simplify them, over 175 of them. They estimate in the first year, just from doing these sprints, that they saved over $4 million. How could you do something like that, either within Mother Equinix or your own team? And here's one more for you. I'm going to dive right into it. That might be interesting. And I'm giving you regulated examples because, to be honest, regulated people have it really hard. And if they can do it, we all can do it. You have regulations too. So NB Power, which is New Brunswick Power, they cannot just change their rates to make more money. That is illegal. And the only way that they can win is to be simpler and take waste out of the system. So I worked with their CEO and I said, well, okay, so how are you going to take waste out of the system? And he said, we're going to simplify. And I said, well, what does that mean? You can't just say it. And he said, I worked with the head of our nuclear division. He volunteered. And he said, I'm going to ask people where the waste is. They know. And we'll see how we can take waste out of the system. The goal was to take $10 million out of the system in the first year. So the head of the nuclear division, right, you have to kind of have the nuclear plants have to work. He said to his staff on a Monday, by Friday, I want you to email me all your suggestions, right, for how we can operate more efficiently, right, and save money. How we can operate more efficiently and save money. Email me, right, and all the ideas that you have. How many ideas do you think he got in that first week? Type that into the chat for me. How many ideas? Any thoughts on that? Number of ideas? 0, 25, 5,000, 3. A Google, very nice. The answer is they only got 12. Now, why? Wrong question. Richard, you're my best friend. That's exactly right. Why did they only get 12? Well, the guy realized, I asked the wrong question. A lot of people really don't care about being more efficient. I mean, they do. Taking waste out of the system, shareholder value. Most people don't get up for that in the morning. What they do get up for is taking away annoyances and things that hold them back from doing the job they were hired to do. So he re-asked the question. Okay, guys, this week, actually, I want to ask you again if you could give me ideas for how we could get rid of things that are overly complex and help you get to the work that you want to do and would really help customers. How many suggestions did he get by that Friday? Type that into the chat. What do you think? How many suggestions? You're close, 837. Here's the takeaway from this. You think that simplicity is financial. It's a great benefit, right? You can charge, by the way, according to a Siegel and Gale study, a 6% price premium just by being easy to work with. Just like Carl said at the beginning of this, right? He's right. You can charge more money because people want to work with you. You have better stock performance. It's proven. And customers are 70% more likely to recommend you. That alone should make you want to embrace simplicity right now. But here's why you want to do it. Simplicity is really cultural and ethical, right? Why do we get so mad when people waste our money, but we don't get the same level of mad when people waste our time? It is a non-renewable resource. You'll never get it back. The bigger thing is culturally, we know that companies where people are working on meaningful work or simplified processes, they work on things that matter, they're more focused and engaged, they're more likely to stay at their job, so they keep HR costs down, and their customers are more satisfied. So let's type this into the chat right now, because I'm about to give you lots of ways that you personally can start simplifying. What would be the impact if we simplified how we worked within your team? What would be the impact if we simplified how you worked within your team? More soup, happier customers, higher production, absolutely. Faster decisions, that is a really important one we're going to come to. Carl, you and I talked about that before this. Job enjoyment, efficiency, less stress, right? Happier people, we'd be rock stars, we'd be getting it done. This is great. Let's keep typing this in. And here's what I want you to think about. We all know the benefits. We all know what's holding us back. You have the mindset to get there. Now you need the tools to do it. I'm going to rattle off. And Carl, this is the moment when we all get our pens out and we start writing things down. I am going to give you right now 20 ways that you are going to start to transform Equinix with simplicity immediately when you leave this keynote. Not all of these will work for you. In fact, some of them won't work at all. But there's a lot here. There's at least a handful that each of you can use depending on the culture within your group to start making simplicity work. So here's the first one I want you to do. Step one is you need to identify where complexity is happening and where you can simplify. So what Carl and I were talking about before this is there's nothing more annoying than when someone says, hey guys, let's simplify. But where? What does that mean? That's so annoying. That's like someone saying, hey guys, let's innovate. On what? How? So let's be thoughtful about this. I'd like you to take a T-chart. And on the left-hand side, I would like you to write down typical tasks that you do. And then I'll tell you what we're going to do on the right side, which is about desired work. First, let's focus on the left-hand side of that T-chart. I would like you in 1 week, and you can be as anal as you want about this with a time tracker or just look at your calendar. I want you to write down 20 tasks that you do in a week. And be specific, right? Don't just write meetings. Write down like analyzing this kind of data, attending this kind of status meeting. I had a guy at Merck even write down this. I fill my calendar with fake meetings just to get things done. That's fine. That was his Monday morning task. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to write down a lot of things that's going to be hard. You're going to be mad at me for a while because it's going to be a hard exercise because you don't think about what you do every week. The second thing you're going to realize is this. I want you to then circle on that list the things that are valuable. And by value, I mean contributes to you getting your KPIs done, generating more revenue, making sales, happier employees. You decide. You're only going to circle a handful of things, maybe only one or two. And then you have to ask yourself as a leader or a team, which is, why don't we circle more? And of the things that aren't circled, why do we do them? Is it obligation? Is it just old ways of doing things? Because you're not going to be able to get to the desired work or simplicity unless you get rid of the things that aren't circled. The right-hand side of the chart is really the most compelling thing. And this is where leaders always laugh because people will come to them and say, I wish I had more time for meaningful work. What kind? What? Like what? Right? We don't even think about that. We just say it. We don't think about it. So on the right-hand side is, what do you wish you were doing? If you had all the time in the world, what were you hired to do? Write that down. And here's what most people would write. They'd write, meet with innovative partners, seek out new sales, explore breakthrough business models, come up with new innovations. Here's your aha. The stuff on the left-hand side is internal. The stuff on the right-hand side is probably going to be external. All right, next thing, I hope you'll be able to identify areas to simplify. The second thing is, and I'm just going to get right into it, I would like you to kill stupid rules. How many here in the chat would like to kill a few stupid rules at work? Anybody have some stupid rules they'd like to kill? A lot of people raise their hand, which is great. So here's the thing. This is probably the #1 thing people love that we teach them to do. It's very hard. You ready? If you could kill or change any 2 rules at work to be more simplified, more innovative, get more sales done, what would they be and why? Here's what happens. You ask people this in your team, they will give you so many ideas you won't know what to do with yourself. And the second thing you're going to know is that they mostly are not rules. They are annoyances, they're cultural norms, they're policies, procedures, they're internal things. And you have to ask yourself, if there are so many things that we can come up with to simplify and kill and get rid of, why haven't we done this sooner? So killing a stupid rule is an incredible thing you can do. Here's the third thing. I am going to make you a chief simplification officer. I'm about to give you a whole bunch of quick tips that we've gathered from our clients all over the world that they use to simplify different areas of their work. Here we go. Let's see which ones you can do. First of all, for emails, let's get started with that. What we want to get to is inbox 0. Try and touch every email only once, and you'll either file it, answer it, or delete it if it is not something that you must answer. Next, I'd love for you to try this one. Create a tagging protocol like they do in the military. So in every subject line, you as a team know if there's an action, decision, or it's just information. They use this at Accenture a lot with a lot of great results. The next one I love, which I learned with the work I do at the NSA, is BLUF. Bottom line up front. This is a big one that they started using within the Army and Navy, and it proliferates because it's effective. Most of us write emails or communications and we lead up to our point. Why don't we start with the key takeaway first? And then the next one, NNTR, which is a favorite of mine from Merck in Canada. They were drowning in emails from people that were FYIs, and people would respond to the FYIs with got it or cool or just political BS. NNTR in the subject line means no need to respond. This is a one-way communication. Read it, delete it, whatever you want. Doing that cut down email traffic at Merck by 18%. Okay, those are email ideas. Next, let's get to meetings. Come on, let's get some efficiency going at Equinix. I'd love you to do a meeting on it, right? Forget about killing stupid rules, kill stupid meetings. Meetings are things that are like empty calories. If you do a meeting audit like Sprint did, they sat with their key groups and said, listen, let's write down all the meetings we have daily, weekly, monthly, and get rid of 50% of them. They didn't get rid of 50%, but they got rid of 23% of them. That's at least 2 hours back per person a week. I'd love you to declare meeting bankruptcy like some companies do on January 1st. Any recurring meeting is wiped off the books, and now you are able to only put it back on recurring meetings if you really think about if you still need it. I'd love you to change the frequency of your meetings. Do weekly meetings have to always be weekly meetings? Like when a project goes on, at some point, can you change them to monthly? Or, you know, they say 30 is the new 60-minute meeting. Can you make it shorter? Okay, go on a time diet. Same thing with 30 is the new 60, 15 is the new 30. How can you make them short and to the point we are all zoomed out? The last one, who said decision-making in the chat? I want to help you with that. Do what Bristol Myers Squibb does. You cannot hold a meeting unless you designate a D, a decision maker, because emails are for information and meetings are for decisions. No decision maker, no meeting. Okay, we're almost done, Carl. Processes. Here's what you want to do with every single process. Take a look at it, and as a team decide, if we got rid of it, who would miss it? If the answer is nobody, bye-bye. Identify redundant processes. This especially works when you get together with other teams that seem to be doing the same kind of work. Okay, here's the next one. Could you please also do a lot of audits here? Do a committee audit. These are kind of interesting too, because committees and reports suck up our time. There's got to be things that you can get rid of. All right, moving on. Run a work hackathon. We do all these hackathons, right, for other things. Why don't we do it on our own work and see how you can hack a work? Sometimes the workaround should be the process. And finally, do what Google did, assign a cut The crap committee, these are people that are assigned on a rotating basis, 2 people every month to come back the next month and report on the crap that they found with the sole purpose of getting rid of it. And then here are the last ones, because we are out of time. I am over time. I would love you to ask smart questions. This is a group, and I'll tell you the one thing Carl told me before this is he said, I mean this sincerely, this is a really smart group and they are in charge. I mean, obviously all you guys are about contracting, your CROs, you got to close deals, you got to ask smart questions. Do the same thing with your work. So first of all, and you have to be bold, ask this question to delete work with your team. If you personally, right, had to delete 25% of what you do right now, Carl's saying, tell me exactly what you're getting rid of, what would it be? No excuses. Say no. What can you start saying no to? And you can't say nothing. You have to say no to at least one thing. Next, time sucks. What processes or things are your biggest time sucks? And if they're time sucks, why are we doing them, right? It's embarrassing. The CEO walks into your office, says, what are your biggest time sucks? You answer, and then the person says, well, why are you doing them? What do you say? And then the last one, do another audit. What zombie meetings serve no purpose? And you should get rid of them. This is about questioning how we work, and we don't spend enough time doing that. So how is simplicity going to transform how you work? As I'm wrapping up here, and Carl and I are going to open this up for some questions, the last thing I'd love to see you type into the chat is, we just rambled through 20 different things, guys, small and large, informal to formal. Which one, don't do all of them, which one are you going to try first? It's important to write it down because cognitive learning theory says that if you write it down and you map it to your brain, you're more likely to do it. So Carl, I'm going to open it up now. And I'd love to do some Q&A. I'm seeing the stuff coming in now over the chat of which ones people like. Here's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a lot of bluff and NNTR.
Yep.
A lot of no. So it sounds like a lot of email, a lot of time. What do you think? What do you see here?
We've got all of the above. I was fearful that if we asked for volunteers for the Cut the Crap community, the entire time would raise their hand. Yeah, I mean, we have meeting audits, we have processes from legacy, approaches that just need to be killed. And so, as I articulated to you, we have a privilege. We reorganized the company about 1.5 years ago. And so we have new eyes, new leadership, new structures that can really tackle this in new ways if empowered. What I hope everybody realizes from this is that this is about empowerment because we have to. Because our jobs have to be more fulfilling, and if they're fulfilling, we're going to do amazing things for customers.
You hit the nail on the head. You really did. And I'd be curious, is there anything that I said, Carl, that you think people would not be empowered to do?
Absolutely nothing. Yeah, nothing.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think it's I think the point is just like DINB, you have to create forcing functions in order to get rid of the crap. And I think your top 20 list gives us a bit of a rule book or a list of things to consider to create some forcing functions, and we have to.
I love it. And I'm happy now. I think we've got some Q&A. I got to look here at the Q&A box if some people type stuff in. So there's some things here, by the way. One of them, I'm just going to take this from, is it Tara or Tara? Any suggestions on how we say no and make it stick? I am going to, Carl, get over to you, and then you can tell me who we should pass this on to. We actually we do all these online courses, on-demand courses, and one of our courses is about killing rules and teaching people how to say no. And I'm happy to send on the actual sheet we created, the cheat sheet of 40 ways to say no. Because I think one of the problems is it's not that people don't want to say no, they'd love to, but they're polite. And they want to know the right way to do it to show that there's boundaries, because that's what it is putting boundaries on your time. And I'm happy to pass that on so we can have some ways that people, it's not just about saying no in a polite way, but teaching people how to set their boundaries.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. We'll take that and we'll leverage it. Look, there's so much momentum on how things used to be done. So even if you try to change them, the old habits just kick in and it becomes comfortable to have that weekly update call. Et cetera, and or to meet before a meeting, to prepare before the meeting that gets, all of that stuff we've just got to cut out. One of the things I'm surprised that I didn't see was, what came to mind if we had more time to do meaningful work is just time to brainstorm. just to talk about the what ifs and where could we's and how should we's and what will happen if. And so I think, creating opportunities to do that will hopefully be forcing functions as well. But super
What
powerful.
I love, what I love about that, Carl, that's people will sometimes laugh. And I don't mean laugh in a funny way, I mean in a skeptical way. When I do the doing overthinking, when I was talking about the complexity trap, and that thinking has become a daring act. And because then people say, well, doing is so important, right? And I agree with that. But what are we doing? I just don't feel like we're doing the meaningful things. And I frankly have really liked COVID, and that I've had more time to think than I normally would have. Like that's a silver lining in a bad situation, that it really forced us to look at how we work, question assumptions, what we do, and have time to really think about what is valuable, because we don't have time anymore to focus on things that aren't.
Well, and I think what's happened though, if we had time, we have now done exactly what we normally do, is we filled it up with more meetings.
Well, so that's interesting too. I'd love to see in the chat that, how many people here feel like they're actually you work longer, right? And so that's why one of the things I will say that we shouldn't underestimate, Carl, to your point is, people are zoomed out and they're working longer. So how can we make sure that not everything is a Zoom meeting? That's why the walking meetings, the call, not everything has to be on video too.
Right.
And the second thing is that time diet, because 30 is the new 60. In person, we met for 60 minutes. On Zoom, we meet for 30. One of the best things we did this year is we launched these 15-minute work hack webinars. And the challenge to everybody with our clients was we could only have meetings where we would accomplish something in less time than it takes to finish a cup of coffee. And it's funny, when we schedule 30-minute meetings, people dread them. When we schedule 15-minute, they reply right away. They're all in, because that's all their brains can commit to right now.
Yeah, I mean, and having meetings to inform when a deck could have been read ahead of time. Meetings should be where we discuss and debate and decide.
Exactly. Yep.
And we have way too meetings where we're just doing readouts, and that can be done separately.
Emails are for information, meetings are for decisions. We actually have there's a couple interesting questions here too. Do we have time for one question?
Sure, please.
Okay, so I see one here, a couple that I can take. Do you have tips to cut the crap without going through a lot of crap to do so? the crap irony question. Yes, the irony of the crap. So the thing that was interesting about how Google did it was the same thing. They didn't want to have to go through processes to get the cut the crap committee approved. They just did it. And I'm not saying to be rogue like that, Carl, but having somebody assign just 2 people to do it, not everybody, that are specifically assigned within a set time, 1 month, to identify crap and come back and present the 3 things they found and recommend getting rid of. So it was structured. There was a time, there were only 2 people, and they had a set metric they had to meet. That made it easier. And it's a very informal way to make complexity go away.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that becomes so obvious when you look in the mirror as an executive, you start realizing how much unnecessary work you end up creating unintentionally. If you really start thinking about the cascading impact of an inquiry or a status call or a review or a whatever. And so I think a lot of this can start with just the executive team being really accountable of what kind of work we want people to do versus what they end up doing in support of our requests.
There's a couple other interesting things here. Has COVID created more meetings in order to collaborate? The answer is, I would say yes. People are burned out because the only way to get together is meeting. So, I mean, we're also redefining what a meeting is, right? It's just kind of like, is your Zoom more formal versus informal, really? You can do an instant Zoom or you can do a set Zoom, right? Kind of like the instant Zoom is the meeting in the hallway you used to have. The thing about it is, though, people are working later because they don't know how to set their boundaries yet between work and life, because frankly, there is no line anymore.
That's right.
It's all one. And so a lot of times people we know this with some of our clients at HBO and Accenture, the boss is mandating set times for meetings, saying no meetings after 7 o'clock, for example. They're mandating that everyone takes certain days off and time off because people are having a hard time setting their own boundaries. And sometimes it needs to come from the top first. That's one. The other thing, again, is going on that time diet. So we're just not becoming beholden to just meeting after meeting after meeting.
Well, Lisa, this has been tremendous. I want to say thank you on behalf of the entire organization.
Yeah, we're over time, so thank you.
Incredibly timely and poignant. And I think leaving us with tips and tricks is, we need the workbook. We need it. And I think we're ready and ripe for it. Fortunately, we have been an incredibly successful company in spite of some of the crap we still navigate, and just imagine the elasticity that could occur if we can get rid of half of it. So pleasure having you aboard, and thank you for doing it virtually. I know it's a whole new world for you, but really impactful.
All good. Thanks, Carl. Really enjoyed it. And thank you to everybody here. Love the chat. Thanks for being great participants. Have a good rest of the time.
Thank you, Lisa.